What's good, YouTube? It's your boy Blade, and we're back with some more disturbing reactions. Today we got my boy Noxly Horror. Shout out Noxly. He watched one of my reactions to his videos. That's the GOAT now. He's the GOAT. Shout out Noxly. He boosted, bro. Okay, he didn't boost. What I meant to say was he got major boost in subs. Boom, this guy was at like 5 or 6K when I first started watching. Boom. Man's are at 8K. Next thing you know, he's gonna hit 10K. That's my dog Noxly. Shout out him for making the fire, Iceberg, and disturbing videos. So without further ado, make sure to like and subscribe, and let's start the video.
These are moments that caused mass panic in South Korea. From citywide blackouts to fears of a spreading illness, this iceberg is gonna get darker and darker as we look at some series of unusual behaviors among the masses. So let's get right into it. Brought to you by Incogni. One of the strangest and most famous Korean panic events didn't involve a virus or a massive disaster, but instead, it involved an ordinary electric fan. See, for decades, many Korean households believed that sleeping in a closed room with a fan running could actually be fatal. This fear became mainstream enough that government safety agencies, major newspapers, and even school teachers repeated warnings about fan death throughout the 1980s and 1990s. Parents told children to shut off fans before bed, and summer nights often ended up with people completely unplugging their fans, even during heat waves. So, how did electric fans put the fear of God into Korea for almost an entire century?
I feel like some crazy thing happened, bro. The fan like short circuited and then like it just blew like fire or something. I feel like that happened, and they're like, nope, you do not sleep. Like nowadays, people do that. We have so many electronics running. People have like AC machines running while they're sleeping. There's so many things that run in the background when you're sleeping. Because we developed good, healthy technology that... What am I trying to say? Some of us are fortunate to live in countries where the electricity is, nice and secure, covered all the safety stuff, you know what I'm saying? So that wouldn't happen. But then again, we buy everything from China. So it's like, are their products really that good? I don't know, man. I used to work at Walmart, and like I'm telling you, every summer, these mans would return the exact fan. Like I would see it. I used to do the carts, and I would see people in the summer buy the fan, and then within like the next few days, that same person comes back with the open box of the fan. And I'm just like, that's why I never bought a fan from Walmart, bro. After seeing that, I'm like, okay, these guys, this is due to quality. So many people were trying to buy a fan. And it was that one brand. It was like a Walmart brand too. And everyone bought it, and then so many people returned it. And I was like, okay, well, that's trash. Okay, let's continue.
Well, basically, Korea first got electric fans under Japanese rule in the 1920s. This was when Korean households had poor insulation, and mortality rates among infants and elderly were pretty high. So, in order to warn people not to overdo it with the fans, newspapers and governments warned about catching a cold from sleeping in the wind, and specifically saying chills lead to death among weak individuals, i.e. infants and the elderly. So in the 1970s, when South Korea's industrialization made electric fans common, newspapers began reporting on summer deaths, and a lot of the people who passed of heat stroke just so happened to have an electric fan in their room. This earlier stigma from years ago, that fan equals death, began evolving into something else entirely. And this is where the phrase fan death first appeared in its modern form. By this point, the message had been completely muddled up. Since the cold was no longer a problem thanks to modern insulation standards, fear gripped the public for completely the wrong reason. Instinctively, people knew that there was something dangerous about these fans, they just didn't know why, and so that fear got repackaged into the fan death mass panic. By the 1980s through to the 2000s, TV, newspapers, and magazines were publishing safety information saying that a fan circulating air in a sealed room might cause oxygen depletion while a person slept. It was this misdiagnosis of heatstroke victims being printed in the newspapers as if the fan had anything to do with it. And it's these misdiagnosis prints that started the stigma as we know it today. In the 1990s, this fear had spread so deep into everyday life that children had heard warnings during health lessons at school, and many grew up believing fan death was a medically recognized danger. Official institutions reinforced this belief, and Korea's National Safety Agency issued seasonal advisories reminding citizens not to sleep with fans running in sealed rooms. In reality, medical professionals repeatedly stated that there was no evidence that fans posed any direct lethal risk, but those statements did little to undo the fear. I put fan death early in the Iceberg because it's the perfect example of how small fear can turn into mass hysteria about something completely innocent. But the deeper we go, the panics stop becoming harmless superstitions and start becoming deadly, beginning with the 2009 swine flu pandemic.
What do you know about the swine flu? If you know about the swine flu, comment down below. That was before COVID. That wasn't even that bad. Because I remember, because people still live normal lives. Like COVID was, well, it was a million times worse. But the swine flu did exist. And like, we were still living normally. So that's the difference. It existed. Swine flu existed. People were scared. But it didn't get to COVID level. Complete shutdown. Like people still living their normal lives. And going to school. I remember going to school, and then all the kids would be like, "Yo, he has swine flu. He has swine flu." Yo, if you get caught coughing or sneezing, yo, everyone will be like, "He has swine flu."
본부 정밀 조사 결과 신종 인플루엔자 추정 환자 3명 중
See, before 2019's lockdowns, Korea experienced an early version of a large-scale health scare, and it happened in 2009 when H1N1, known globally as swine flu, spread across the country and overwhelmed public attention.
The virus, which is formally known as H1N1, has become
Yeah, that's what it was called too.
the world's fastest moving flu epidemic. It's spread across 177 countries in the 4 months since it was first identified. More than 1 million people have already contracted the virus in New York alone.
The first confirmed Korean case appeared on May 2nd, and infections rose rapidly afterward. The virus moved through schools, military units, workplaces, and university dorms, and by the end of the outbreak, Korea had recorded hundreds of thousands of confirmed cases and more than 100 flu-related deaths. For Korea, the sudden severity of a new influenza strain created a level of anxiety that ordinary seasonal flu had never produced. H1N1 felt different because it emerged without warning. The public had no familiarity with it, vaccines were not yet available, and previous immunity offered little protection. I mean, just think about early 2019. We all remember the fear of living through that and the amount of misinformation that spread early on, and just how strenuous it was on hospitals and emergency rooms, with healthcare workers dealing with exhausting workloads.
Yeah, the COVID was like, everyone heard about it. It was like, Wuhan, China, COVID-19. I was like, damn. I remember looking at my phone. I was like, damn, that's crazy. It's not gonna come to Canada. The boy was not wrong. I was like, yeah, it's only in China, bro. It's not gonna come here. Worldwide shutdown. Next thing you know, my whole early 20s was a blur. And now I'm 55 years old. I'm joking, I'm not 55 years old.
Koreans watched international news showing hospitals in the United States and Mexico under stress, and the sense of vulnerability increased as domestic cases multiplied. By early 2010 though, conditions improved. Vaccines arrived, case numbers declined, and public concern eased. But the swine flu altered how Korea understood infectious disease. It normalized mask use as a socially acceptable and even responsible act. It's why you would see people wearing masks before 2019.
Yo, that's what I was saying. Yo, so many people in Korea, especially, they were already wearing masks. I took no. Yo, there was. I'm not even lying. I literally thought it was a fashion trend in Korea, and I was convinced. I was like, yo, low key, what if I started bringing that here? What if I start wearing a mask? But then the world was like, oh, it's not a fashion sense. It's not a fashion style. You're gonna wear it for the next 5 years.
Over in Asia, masks were just way more normalized due to these events. In retrospect, H1N1 was Korea's first modern pandemic scare. It lacked the intensity of 2019, but acted as an early signal that society could be shaken by a pathogen long before anyone expected it.
2년 전 갑자기 전력 공급이 끊기면서 전국을 혼란에 빠뜨린 9.15 대정전 사태 기억하시는 분들 많으실 텐데요.
On September 15th, 2011, an ordinary late-night summer afternoon in South Korea turned unexpectedly unstable. Without warning, electricity dropped across large regions of the country. Power lines feeding major districts shut off, and more than 1.6 million homes and businesses went dark. Elevators stopped abruptly between floors, leaving people stuck waiting for rescue.
Oh, that's a nightmare fuel right there. Imagine just your normal business 9 to 5 life. And then you're on the elevator, and next thing you know, cuts off, pure darkness. And then you're just stuck in the middle of whatever floor you're going to.
The blackout spread far enough that many assumed something more than a technical glitch was unfolding. South Korea is a nation where sudden disruptions often raise deeper questions about security and vulnerability. When traffic lights in part of Seoul went dark, intersections grew hazardous. Drivers found themselves inching forward without reliable signals, and several collisions occurred, including one fatal accident reported at a busy crossing. Street-level confusion created a scene, and that the outage was not confined to a single neighborhood, but it reached a scale that felt national. For the first hour, nearly everything people assumed about the stability of the national grid felt uncertain.
A major blackout in the Seoul metropolitan area on Sunday.
2년 전 갑자기 전력 공급이 끊기면서
정부도 어제 긴급 담화문까지 발표하면서 국민과 기업들의 전기절약에 동참해달라고 호소했습니다.
Rumors arose quickly because no one had information. A small number of public figures suggested the possibility of a cyber attack. The suggestion gained brief attention because South Korea had experienced hostile actions from the north a few years prior. And although majority of media
Yeah, I was gonna say it, but I didn't want to say it. But he said it. Noxly said it, not me.
outlets avoided speculation, the absence of real information opened space for anxiety to take over. While people waited for an answer, commuters in darkened subway stations checked their phones for updates. Passengers wondered whether the outage was limited to their district or if it had spread nationwide. Calls to the power authority overloaded information lines. Without reliable updates, uncertainty became the defining feature of those hours. When power gradually returned, the explanation arrived. It was not sabotage or cyber intrusion, but an unusually strong heat wave had pushed demand to unprecedented levels. Additionally, several power plants were offline for scheduled maintenance at this time, and predictive models underestimated how much electricity households or businesses would use that day. With supply inefficient, the grid destabilized and collapsed in rolling outages. In a world so dependent, where we've lived our entire lives with electricity, a world without it is pretty horrifying. In 2013, an underground site called SSN-DOB was exposed, and what made it disturbing wasn't just that criminals were selling stolen identities, but it was whose data they had. See, SSN-DOB specialized in social security numbers, addresses, phone numbers, relatives. Essentially, they specialized in creating full identity profiles on people. Puzzled by this, investigators looked into it and discovered that the information came from major data brokers, the same kind of companies that quietly collect and resell personal information every single day. Now maybe you're wondering who this data breach affected. Well, I'm not talking about Korea anymore. because the people affected would be me and you. US citizens, people in the UK, Europe, people who had never opted in, never been notified, never even knew their information had been copied, resold, and passed through criminal networks. Your name, your home address, your phone number, your relatives. This information is publicly available on so-called search this person sites. Sites that anyone can access. Employers, landlords, strangers. And once it's out there, it doesn't stay in one place. Now for tier 2. This is where things are about to
Oh, I see what he did. He combined it with the sponsor. Hey, don't be sponsored.
get more serious, so let's get right into it. In 2008, South Korea faced a food safety panic.
Okay, should I go back? Maybe there's what?
Sites that anyone can access. Employers, landlords, strangers. That's why I use Incogni. Incogni automatically tracks down these data brokers and requests removal under privacy laws, repeatedly, because of course the data comes back. But so does Incogni, who keeps removing
Okay.
it.
Okay.
Meant-
Shout out Incogni.
Link
60%
below.
off.
Now
There it
for
is.
tier 2. This is where things are about to get more serious, so let's get right into it. In 2008, South Korea faced a food safety panic that spread faster than any previous contamination scare in the country. It began with news from China. Several dairy manufacturers were exposed for adding melamine, an industrial chemical, to milk products to artificially increase protein readings. The scandal first broke after infants in China developed health problems. As that story grew, South Koreans realized that many imported foods on store shelves had originated from the same supply chains.
가짜 분유 파문이 또 일고 있습니다. 우유 알레르기가 있는 아이들을 위한 특수 분유라며 판매된 제품을 먹고
The moment Korean news outlets confirmed that domestic retailers had stocked products tied to the contamination, consumer confidence collapsed almost instantly. Supermarkets reported customers abandoning carts after recognizing brands linked to Chinese imports. Families began checking ingredient lists with heightened suspicion. Many threw away entire boxes of snacks, powders, instant drinks, and candies, even when regulators later clarified that some of those items contained no melamine at all. Fear was moving faster than fact. Instant formula became one of the most symbolic flashpoints. Although most Korean brands were safe, uncertainty about the origins of raw ingredients caused widespread anxiety among parents. Hotlines operated by food safety authorities were flooded with calls from confused and frightened consumers, asking whether popular formulas of milk powder and coffee mixes were contaminated. The panic became national conversation overnight. As national governments traced supply networks, they discovered that certain processed imports, especially cookies, biscuits, and powdered creamers, did contain detectable amounts of melamine. However, none reached the high toxicity levels reported in China. But the presence alone was enough to transform the situation from distant tragedy into Korean food safety emergency. Retailers scrambled to remove the items from shelves, and health officials issued announcements later that day naming products that were recalled or blocked at customs.
The new scandal is affecting customer confidence in domestic milk products.
I'm really shocked to hear about this and will never buy domestic products anymore.
I have never bought domestic powder. I want something better for my child.
Public distrust expanded beyond the contaminated products. Many Koreans questioned the reliability of import oversight, and confidence in food labeling weakened. The idea that invisible industrial chemicals could infiltrate everyday snacks and drinks unsettled the population in a way previous scares
Jeez. That's so tedious to do. That's annoying.
had not. It exposed how much domestic markets depended on imported dairy ingredients at the time, something the general public had rarely considered before. International coverage amplified the situation. Korean authorities later emphasized that most domestic products were safe and that exposure levels in recalled imports had been low. But the psychological impact lingered longer than expected, and for many households, habits changed permanently. Parents became more vigilant about country of origin labels and often avoided imported milk powder for years. In the spring of 2008, South Korea was pulled into one of the largest health-related public panics in its modern history. What started as a television investigation turned into a nationwide wave of fear that lasted for months, reshaping politics, national trust, and the way Korean society responded to perceived health threats. The spark came on April 29, 2008, when NBC's investigative program PD Notebook aired a special report on the potential dangers of US beef imports. The program claimed that American beef carried a serious risk of mad cow disease.
Not the mad cow disease.
And it included alarming segments suggesting Koreans could be especially vulnerable to the human variant VCJD. Later analysis found many of these claims to be misleading or incorrect, but the broadcast landed at a moment when public anxiety around food safety was already rising. The melamine stuff we just talked about. Incredibly terrible timing. Within days, the report spread rapidly through online forums, text messages, and school communities. Parents exchanged warnings about cafeteria beef. Students shared clips of the broadcast, and the belief that the government's new beef import agreement with the United States might expose Koreans to a deadly illness became a widespread fear, strengthened by constant sensational media coverage, causing the panic to take on a bit of a life of its own.
Bro, why is this guy driving crazy, bro? What's this guy's issue?
Strengthened by constant
Does he have mad cow disease?
sensational media coverage, causing the panic to take on a bit of a life of its own. It got so serious that people actually began protesting. Early gatherings started small, led mostly by middle school and high school students who brought candles to downtown Seoul as a symbol of concern. But the numbers grew at remarkable speed, and by May, hundreds of thousands were filling central Seoul, and at peak, up to 1 million people were estimated to have participated nationwide. The streets around City Hall and major boulevards turned into a sea of flickering lights. The
That's crazy.
imagery was pretty unforgettable. The movement developed its own culture, with protesters even creating this cute candle girl mascot. Public confidence in the newly elected Lee Myung-bak administration plummeted. Approval ratings dropped sharply, the government was forced to renegotiate and delay the beef import agreement with the United States. It was an extraordinary moment, a health scare that reshaped national policy and shook the authority of a sitting president. The candlelight protests also left a long cultural legacy. Their aesthetic, vast candlelit crowds filling city plazas, reappeared years later in the 2016 to 2017 impeachment protests, showing how deeply the 2008 movement had imprinted itself on the national psyche. The legal aftermath also continued for years. PD Notebook producers were charged with misreporting, but were later acquitted. Either way, it's pretty inspiring to see everyone band together, even if the danger of mad cow disease was incredibly small and massively over-exaggerated by media and misinformation. 2 years after the Fukushima nuclear disaster in Japan, South Korea faced a wave of fear from the possibility that contaminated products might slip across the border. By mid-2013, new reports from Japan revealed leaks of radioactive water from storage tanks at the Fukushima site. Korean media carried the news heavily, and within days, anxiety surged across the country. The official radiation readings in Korea remained normal. The seafood sold in major markets passed inspections, yet the fear did not fade. Because the panic wasn't driven by what authorities confirmed, it was driven by what people imagined could be hidden from view. Online communities exploded, with posts claiming that contaminated fish, sea salt, and seaweed from Japan were circulating through Korean markets. Some users uploaded maps showing supposed radiation plumes traveling across the Pacific, even though those diagrams were scientifically inaccurate. The images spread faster than corrections, and many Koreans began avoiding seafood entirely. Restaurants reported sudden drops in customers ordering raw fish, and some markets saw piles of untouched mackerel or squid, even on weekends when stalls were usually crowded. The fear even moved beyond food. Parents worried about Japanese cosmetics, college students circulated warnings about vitamin supplements containing marine extracts. Others questioned whether imported toy materials might contain trace radiation. None of these concerns were backed by any concrete evidence at all, but
Yeah, that's crazy. That's the internet, bro. And one random person can just mislead everyone, and then they'll be like, "This guy said this. That means." I mean, this is very concerning because it's radioactive, bro. We don't know. I don't know what the heck could happen, bro. We had radioactive fish. That's like insta kill, bro. Radioactive seaweed, or radioactive anything, bro. I mean, I understand why they would freak out like this.
completely fabricated by the mass hysteria growing through the country. I mean, it feels unfair to just label it as mass hysteria because, I mean, it realistically feels like there could be contaminated stuff going on here, which is why it's so easy to be filled with fear about this specifically. The idea that contamination could appear anywhere, in any form, created an atmosphere where reassurance was difficult. And by late summer, misinformation was instilled further. Viral posts claimed Japanese salt was secretly mixed into Korean brands, prompting households to examine labels more closely than ever before. Some people threw out bags of salt and soy sauce simply because they couldn't confirm where ingredients were from. Rumors also circulated that rainwater in Korea carried radioactive particles, despite monitoring stations showing no such trend. The panic had grown into a broader environmental fear, one that treated the entire region as potentially contaminated. The Korean government tried to calm the situation through daily briefings. Officials released updated radiation testing results, even going as far as to block certain Japanese prefectures from exporting food, and repeated that Korean water showed no abnormalities. But public trust was strained. Memories of previous food safety controversies made some citizens reluctant to believe official statements, and as a result, even accurate information had limited impact. In September 2013, the Korean government expanded its import restrictions, banning seafood from a range of Japanese coastal prefectures near Fukushima. This move had enormous symbolic power, but for many Koreans, the ban confirmed that the danger was real enough to justify drastic measures. The public did not differentiate between precautionary policy and evidence of contamination. Once the ban was in place, anxiety broadened even more, and Korean social media filled with new rounds of speculation about long-term environmental consequences. International media took notice. Outlets in the US, Europe, and Asia ran stories about Korea's fear of radioactive imports, often showing footage of shoppers inspecting seafood as if each piece carried an invisible threat. The coverage reinforced the perception that Korea was experiencing a full-scale environmental alarm. Now for Tier 3. This is where things stop being labeled as hysteria and more so genuine mass panic. So let's get straight into it.
Alright, I like that a lot.
In the 1970s, building codes mandated
Okay, why are these... I feel like this quality is so bad.
basements as shelters from the ongoing threat of North Korea. If you've seen the movie Parasite, it encapsulates almost everything about South Korea if you dig deep enough into the writing. But what this movie showed me was the real fear of North Korea. I mean, it's easy for anyone living in the UK or US or anywhere to not grasp the real threat of having a neighbor that might actually do it. I mean, we can understand North Korea is bad, but it didn't directly hit me that, man, some of these people grew up in real fear until I watched Parasite. Now, what am I getting at other than that I'm an idiot? Well, that in this mass panic iceberg, modern South Korea has lived in recurring fear for as long as it's existed, with 4 major panic waves in modern history: 2010, 2013, 2017, and 2022. This was the first attack on South Korean civilians since the Korean War. Smoke clouds were broadcast live, which caused citizens to believe that the full war was beginning. Approximately 170 artillery shells were fired at the island. There were 4 casualties, 2 Marines and 2 civilians. But what's strange is that both countries said the other fired first. This was one of the most intense, sudden fear waves in decades at this point, and Seoul raised its threat level to the maximum, further terrifying its civilians that something more was coming, although thankfully it didn't. Though if you remember around this time, this was when North Korean tension peaked, as they were running nuclear test cycles. Like on the 12th of February, 2013, North Korea conducted its 3rd underground nuclear test, which happened to be a success. The event was detected as an artificial earthquake, registered as a magnitude 5.1. This came as North Korea threatened the final destruction of South Korea, as well as a preemptive nuclear strike against the United States. There were also 3 notable cyber attacks in this period, all attributed to North Korea. Now obviously, there was no preemptive nuclear strike as we're all here, but the fear at the time was very real, and North Korea continued to fuel this fear into 2017, as they tested multiple missiles by flying them over Japan. Trump made remarks at this, promising fire and fury if North Korea continued such actions, which was seen as escalating tensions. But in hindsight, it seemed to work, as this was their last major breach until they tested the waters again in 2022. This was when they flew drones into South Korean airspace, closing airports and causing a Ka-1 plane to crash. The looming threat of North Korea continues to cause recurring fear in the South. Having a neighbor constantly poking at you and threatening you will do that, but these moments highlight the true mass panic that went through the minds of civilians all over the country. Itaewon is known for having this fun and eventful nightlife. It's a place where you can unwind in bars, restaurants, and nightclubs. And so, when Halloween 2022 came around, people figured they'd go and do just that. But due to COVID-19 restrictions just lifting at the time, this would be the first open Halloween in 4 years.
계속해서 늘어나고 있는 사망자, 당시 상황이 얼마나 급박하고 참혹했는지 짐작하게 합니다.
토요일 밤 3년 만에 헬로윈 분위기가 절정에 달했던 서울 이태원.
Critical density was reached and exceeded, with hundreds of thousands of people overflowing into alleyways with minimal police presence, meaning there was no traffic control, no crowd flow management, and no one to see how bad things were getting before they did.
Okay, we've seen enough videos about large crowds. We all know where this is going. We're gonna see innocent people getting trampled on and dying.
This is the deadliest crowd crush in South Korean history, with 196 plus people injured and 159 people passing away.
I'm not surprised.
Connecting the Hamilton Hotel to the main Itaewon Street, people were boxed in to this steep, narrow, sloping alley, which was just 3.2 to 4 meters wide. During survivor testimony, people claimed their feet were completely off the ground, being pushed without moving their legs. By 8 p.m., 112 emergency calls began coming in, but this was still hours before the real crush. People called reporting people can't move and that someone will die. But the police didn't intervene. And by 10:15 p.m., people began suffocating. The mass panic on social media was closer to desperation, with people trying to locate their missing friends. But the most messed up thing was that because it was later on in the night, a lot of people's phones were dead. So parents who were unable to contact their children panicked, and emergency lines quickly became overwhelmed. Parents also flooded into hospitals looking for their children, as many of the victims were young, not knowing if their kid was one of the near 200 injured or dead. The public anxiety after this night is still prevalent today, with people reporting discomfort in entering crowded subways, many avoiding nightlife for months, and young adults feeling increased anxiety in enclosed or congested spaces, causing effectively a collective trauma for a lot of young people in South Korea.
That's why you don't get so excited when the COVID stuff dropped. Even me, I was like, I'm still chilling. I'm not gonna go crazy and just immediately go outside. This is why you take it easy, assess the situation. You don't just be like, okay, COVID restrictions are gone, and then you're like, okay, I'm gonna do this, and then freaking 10,000 people have the same idea as you. You go all meet up at the same place. You get cooked.
Now for Tier 4. So let's just get started and look.
Damn, there's only one thing in Tier 3, so now we're at the worst of the worst.
Looking at the most disturbing cases on this list. For years, humidifiers were a household staple in...
Bro, I just bought one, bro. I literally just bought one and now I'm gonna get traumatized.
South Korea. Dry winters made them almost essential, and many families used additives sold as humidifier disinfectants to keep the water tanks clean. These products were marketed as safe, approved, and convenient, going on to be used in nurseries, bedrooms, and even hospitals. Parents poured them into machines that ran through the night, believing they were protecting their children from mold and bacteria. But in 2011, a mysterious pattern of illness began to appear. Otherwise healthy adults developed severe lung damage, with doctors struggling to identify the cause. Their illnesses didn't behave like infections, and they didn't match known environmental conditions. Entire families reported symptoms without any clear link. That was until investigators finally discovered the common factor: humidifier sterilizers. this revelation took years to surface publicly, and when it finally broke wide open in 2016 and 2017, the scale was staggering. Hundreds of Koreans had died, and thousands more were injured, many with permanent lung damage. Victims included newborn babies, pregnant women, and people who had used the product exactly as the labels had instructed. The chemical compounds inside these sterilizers, including polyhexamethylene guanidine, PHMG, had been aerosolized into basically the bad microscopic
Yo, I feel you, man. I feel you. It's okay.
chemicals make your lungs its home, and they don't like coming out, causing near permanent lung damage. Once the government acknowledged the link, the nation reacted with a mix of horror, grief, and fury. It was a tragedy that had unfolded quietly in living rooms, bedrooms across the country, an everyday appliance that had been lethal this entire time.
I didn't even know that existed, a sterilizer for humidifiers. I swear they say use. They say use distilled water or purified water. They say not to use tap water because it can get moldy. Still use tap water. Now I'm scared. I'm gonna have to start buying distilled water just for my humidifier.
And the truth is, events like these are not unique to Korea. They're frighteningly easy to create in any modern country. When a product becomes trusted, approved, and woven into daily life, danger can slip through the cracks before anyone notices. After the news came out to the public about humidifiers, public trust in consumer goods collapsed almost overnight. People emptied entire bathroom cabinets, threw out cleaning sprays, disinfectants, air fresheners, and every product that resembled the ones involved in the scandal. Online forums filled with people uploading photos of chemical bottles they planned to dispose of, asking if they're okay or not. Retailers faced a wave of returns and complaints, and even unrelated brands suffered, causing a mass freakout over anything that produced vapor or aerosol. The legal and political fallout was enormous. The government faced accusations of slow investigation, regulatory oversight failure, and years of silence while victims died unnoticed. They had until 2011 to figure this out, and it took them until 2017.
Damn, bro. What the hell were y'all doing for 6 years?
Executives were prosecuted, and public apologies were broadcast on national television. But for many families, the apologies meant little, as the damage had already been done. Overall humidifier use dropped sharply nationwide. Consumers became far more suspicious of chemical additives, and government regulations on household products toughened significantly. In a way, the scandal reshaped South Korea's entire consumer landscape. On December 3rd, 2024, Yoon Suk-yeol, the then president of South Korea, declared emergency martial law in a surprise nationwide address. If you were on Twitter during this time, then I'm sure you can remember the panic unfolding among people in South Korea, with fear that South Korea was about to collapse into a dictatorship. But what really happened here? For martial law to be deployed in the first place, something behind the scenes must have snapped, right? Well, in Yoon's address, he claimed he was protecting South Korea from the communist forces of North Korea. He claimed that his opposition, the Democratic Party, was impeaching his ministers, blocking his budgets, and refusing to cooperate with him, sabotaging the administration, which he saw as anti-state activities, akin to rebellion. Now, martial law can be declared in cases of violent rebellion, but that wasn't what this was at all. Yoon had actually recently just lost the April 2024 election, meaning the Democratic Party won a large majority in South Korea's government. With low approval ratings on top of this, Yoon declared martial law as a last-ditch power play, not to protect South Korea from any impeding communist forces. His address went viral all over social media and news stations worldwide, with clips of the military blocking off parliament going viral. The biggest worry was military takeover, that the military would be storming the streets, initiating curfews, protests becoming illegal, and a shutdown of the internet, with the videos of military in parliament fueling those fears further. Within an hour, there were mass protests in the streets of Korea, with people rushing to the National Assembly, and by midnight, journalists, protesters, and crowds of people. Hold on.
This guy's. This guy's not serious, bro. Hey, you could have cut that out, but you left it in. Okay, respects, bro. Respects.
With people rushing to the National Assembly, and by midnight, journalists, protesters, and crowds of people reached the Parliament building in an attempt to physically block a coup. I also have to mention there was genuine fear in the older generation who had lived through multiple military coups, most notably the 1980 Gwangju massacre, which happened under martial law also. A lot of Koreans online were terrified that history was repeating itself. So, with the country in a panic, analysts were worried it would escalate into a civil war, as clashes between police and protesters actually began. Lawmakers stayed inside the Parliament building overnight in an attempt to annul it, managing a unanimous vote of 190 to 0 to put an end to the martial law that night. Military and police were also hesitant to follow the order, so with the divided leadership, there was no way the martial law could continue to stand. And by 3 to 4 a.m. the following morning, the martial law was revoked, and Yoon's coup attempt collapsed. Yoon was impeached on December 14th with 204 votes, one of the highest impeachment margins in Korean history, removing his presidential powers immediately. A few weeks later, a Korean court approved a warrant for his arrest, on charges including abuse of power, violation of the constitution, and illegally deploying military forces. With the court trial finding Yoon having lied about anti-state forces and that there was no real national emergency, just Yoon's attempt at personal political survival.
They popping off, bro. They popping off.
Yoon has then since been arrested, jailed, released, and then rearrested, with the legal process ongoing. To this day, he still remains under heavy scrutiny.
That's crazy. What the hell is this? Oh my god.
Have you ever been in a game and felt that sudden...
Okay, relax.
Caused mass panic.
Okay, that was Korea's most disturbing mass panic. That's crazy, bro. These guys be freaking out pretty often. Kind of feel bad for them, you know. That was way too many freakouts. From something as simple as a fan to the worst of the worst. Contaminated. There's like multiple contaminated food. Like 3 times. And then the Itaewon disaster. That's just like, I don't even know what to say, bro. People need to calm down when it comes to these things. And then the humidifier scandal, that just makes me scared. But I don't even, I feel like now I gotta be way more cautious. And then this guy's martial law last resort option just for him to get cooked and arrested. And then set free and then arrested again. That's crazy, bro. Korea got some crazy lore that I never knew. That's why my boy Noxly was here to inform us all. So make sure to sub to my boy Noxly. Boom, let's get him 10k subs. Like his video, watch his video, sub up. And if you like my video, it's not even my video, my reaction to Noxly's video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. And subscribe for more reactions. I appreciate all of you. You guys are going crazy. We are getting views that I never got in like months. So I appreciate you guys all for watching and liking and subbing. And watching all the way through. That's the main thing. I love y'all. I'm gonna see you tomorrow in the next video. So, have yourself a good night. And I will see you later. Peace.